The Pokemon TCG has a new mechanic for their cards this year called the V Star mechanic. V Stars are going to be Pokemon V that evolve from a Pokemon V, but they have a V Star power. You can only use one V Star power per game, and they can be either an ability or an attack. There will be 6 V Stars coming out between January and February. Leafeon and Glacion are coming out in promo boxes, and Arceus, Whimsicott, Charizard, and Shaymin are coming out in the new Brilliant Stars set in February. These are likely going to make a splash, at least some of them, in the competitive field of the Pokemon trading card game. And so today I'm going to rank them from best to worst. It's not really a tier list, but we're using Tier Maker just to rank them from number 1 to number 6, number 1 being the best V-Star, in my opinion, for competitive Pokemon TCG. So before we get into this, make sure you let me know in the comments down below what you would rank or where you would rank these V-Stars. The Whimsicott was just recently revealed, so that is the freshest one, but we will go through what each of them do before I rank them. I do want to start with RCSV Star, though. This will be the poster Pokemon of the new Arceus Legends game and of Brilliant Stars. So why don't we take a look at RCSV Star real quick. I actually don't think we need to look at the translation because there is an English scan of the card already. So RCSV Star, also just side note, these cards look absolutely beautiful. It evolves from RCSV. It has 280 HP. It is colorless type. It has the Trinity Nova attack. For 3 colorless energy, it does 200 damage, and you search your deck for up to 3 basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon V in any way you like. So that attack on its own, there is a double colorless energy coming out in this set. It's called double powerful energy, I believe. Let's see what that is. Double turbo energy. So it does count as 2 colorless energies for just 1 energy attachment, but your attacks do 20 less. So if you're going to use Trinity Nova for just 2 energy attachments, attach turn 1, and then turn 2 evolve into this and attach a special double turbo energy, your attacks will be doing 180, or your Trinity Nova will be doing 180 with that double turbo energy. So let's assume we're using it that way for just 2 energy attachments to deal 180, which will knock out anything in 2 hits. And then you get to search your deck for up to 3 basic energy cards and attach them to your other Pokemon V. And that could be Pokemon V Max, or Pokemon V Star. Heck, it could even be Pokemon V Union, but those are kind of just memey. Pokemon V Union aren't really used competitively. But I think this is a really, really solid attack. And also keep in mind, RCSV Star is just a 2-prize Pokemon. Your opponent gets 2 prizes when it's knocked out, as opposed to V Maxes, which will reward 3. So that attack on its own is very, very solid. It could be 3 basic energies of the same type or different types. So you could play like a toolbox style deck potentially with RCSV Star. And then its V-Star power, which you can use once a game, is the ability Starbirth. During your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand. You can't use more than 1 V-Star power in a game. So, you get to search your deck for any 2 cards. That could be that double turbo energy we were just talking about. It could be the new Sharon's Care card from this set that just picks up one of your colorless Pokemon, thus completely healing them. It can get any card you need, Boss's Orders to win the game, whatever it may be. You could search out any 2 cards. And what's so great about this is you can evolve this RCSV Star and let it sit there for turns until you need to use this ability. So I think RCSV Star is going to be a card you can splash like a 1-1 or 2-2 line of RCSV and V-Star into just about any deck you need it in, and it could also build this toolbox style deck around the first attack. So we are going to rank RCSV Star as the number 1 V-Star here out of the 6 V-Star cards we have coming out in promos and in Brilliant Stars. Next, let's talk about Leafeon V Star. So this is really cool because Leafeon and Glacion, of course, the evolutions from Diamond and Pearl, with the Diamond and Pearl remakes and Legends Arceus happening, are going to be 2 of the cards featured, or 2 of the Pokemon featured, getting V Stars first. So we have this Leafeon V Star. Leafeon's my favorite evolution. It has 260 HP, evolves from Leafeon V, of course. And let's keep in mind, Leafeon already has a V Max Pokemon. So you could play 4 Leafeon V, 3 Leafeon V Max as your main attackers, and then you could also just splash in a Leafeon V Star to your deck. and it has the attack Leaf Guard, 2 energy and a colorless to do 180, and then you take 30 less damage from attacks next turn. Not horrible. It's a pretty average power leveled attack for a Pokemon that evolves from a V Pokemon. Of course, we don't have a lot to go off of for saying what's average on a V Star, but in terms of V Max power level and being worth 1 less prize, I think this is about average power level, or what I would expect to see out of a decent V Star. And then it also has an ability as its V Star power, the ability Ivy Star. Almost sounds like you're about to say Ivysaur. So Ivy Star, during your turn, you may switch one of your opponent's benched Pokemon with their active Pokemon. This might seem a lot kind of underwhelming compared to RCSV Star, but this is basically a Boss's Orders, and Boss's Orders is a supporter card that brings up one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. This is doing that, but on an ability. And just like RCSV Star, you can evolve this Leafeon and just leave it there until you need to use this ability, which is so great. Your opponent can't disrupt this unless they are locking abilities or they knock out your Leafeon V Star the way they could just Marnie your Boss's Orders out of your hand. And because of that, and because of Leafeon VMAX already being an established archetype, I'm saying that Leafeon V Star is our second best V Star that's coming out. Having a Boss's Orders for game just sitting on your board whenever you need it sounds incredibly good. And this is also a card that I'm ranking high because I think you can put it in not just a Leafeon V or V Star VMAX deck. I think you could put this in a deck and just evolve it and leave it on your bench because you need a Boss's Orders at some point. You know, there's not many V Star powers to choose from right now, and everybody will get to use one V Star power a game. So some players might just add a 1/1 Arceus or a 1/1 line of Leafeon in their deck to get value out of getting to use a V Star power for that game. And because of that, I think the V Star ability cards are going to be generally seen as stronger, at least for now. That's how I'm seeing it, that number 1 and number 2 are both V Star powers that have abilities as opposed to attacks. But speaking of attacks, let's look at an attack one next. We'll look at Charizard V Star. Let's see here. There we go. Charizard V Star also has an English scan already, so we can look at that instead of a translation. Charizard V Star, 280 HP, so it's quite bulky for just being worth 2 prizes, just like RCSV Star is. And it has 2 attacks. Explosive Fire, Fire colorless to do 130, and if this Pokemon has any damage on it already, it does 100 more damage. We know that there is a stadium called Magma Basin coming out in this set that allows you to accelerate a fire energy from discard to a fire Pokemon and then put 2 damage on it. So that could get it set up turn 2, and it could get that damage on it, and you're swinging for 260 damage for 2 manual attachments and 1 extra energy from that stadium to do 230, my bad, 230. It can be ramped up with other things to make damage do more, like the new Choice Belt coming out that will make it do 30 more to other V Star VMAX Pokemon. But Explosive Fire to do 230 for 3 energy is not bad at all. That's going to knock out most, or if not all, basic V Pokemon without any extra HP buffs on them. And then Star Blaze for 1 extra energy. It does 320 and you discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, but that is its V Star power. So you can only use 1 V Star power per game. And so you can only do that Star Blaze once. But if you Explosive Fire 2 V Pokemon and then Star Blaze a V Max, or Explosive Fire a V Max twice and then Star Blaze the last V Max, you'll win the game. So you only have to use these attacks a couple of times because they're very heavy hitting, and it's okay that you can only use Star Blaze once, because if you're knocking out a VMAX with it, you're taking half of your prizes. So I think that trade-off is quite fair. And Charizard V Star is getting a good bit of support coming out in the Brilliant Stars set, like the Magma Basin I mentioned, and also a supporter card that discards fire energy to get some cards out of the top 7 cards of your deck. So I'm going to say Charizard is the 3rd best V Star that we have so far. Number 4 is very tricky for me, but I think we're going to go with Shaymin V Star. Now let's talk about Shaymin. So Shaymin V Star. We have to look at the translation for this one. It has 250 HP, so it is on the lower HP side of things. It has 1 attack Revenge Burst, 120 plus damage. This attack does 40 more for each prize card your opponent has already taken. So if your opponent's already taken, let's say 5 prize cards. Let's say they've knocked out a VMAX and a V or V Star. That means they've taken 5 prize cards. Revenge Burst will do 320 damage. That sounds amazing. The ability V Star Power Star Bloom. You may use this ability during your turn, heal 120 damage from each of your grass Pokemon. Now, I think that ability is quite underpowered. I would have expected it to either heal more damage or heal all damage from all or some of your grass Pokemon. But healing 120 damage can be good. Depending on the metagame. If there's a lot of damage spread decks like Jolteon VMAX and Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, that can heal like an entire attack's worth of damage off of multiple Pokemon. So it can be good situationally, and it's also worth mentioning that the Shaymin V that it evolves from has Revenge Burst, but just with 60 less base damage. So I do think this card can be good, but it relies on Fire not being incredibly good because this card could be good in a Leafeon VMAX deck. You can play Leafeon VMAX with 1 Leafeon V Star, and that's not really bulking up your deck because you already had that Leafeon V and VMAX line taking up space, and you just toss in the 1 Leafeon V Star, and then you toss in like 1-1 Shaymin V Star or 2-2 Shaymin V Star. Or 2-1 even, and you can have 2 V-Star powers in one deck to choose from, and even if you don't need Shaymin for its V-Star power Star Bloom, it has a great finishing attack that can do a maximum of 320 damage before other damage buffs if your opponent has taken 5 prize cards, and you can play the game in a way to try to force your opponent to knock out a VMAX and then a 2 prize Pokemon so that you get to that turn where your opponent has taken 5 prize cards. So I do think Shaymin V Star has potential, and it might even end up being better than some of the others that I ranked above it. Next, we're going to talk about Whimsicott V Star, which was the last one to be revealed from the Japanese Starbirth set. Whimsicott V Star is a psychic type Pokemon. Of course, Whimsicott is fairy, but fairy is now represented in the TCG as psychic. It is resistant to metal. And let's keep in mind a couple things of support that Psychic has around it. It has Horror Energy, which is a special energy that damages the opponent by 2 damage counters when this Pokemon is hit. You have the new Double Turbo Energy that can suffice for that 2 energy cost we see that we'll talk about. And we also have Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, which has a different weakness. It's weak to Dark, and it can accelerate energy from hand to the benched Psychic Pokemon once a turn for each Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. So, Whimsicott V Star, 250 HP Psychic, weak to metal, resistant to nothing, retreat cost 1. It has 1 regular attack, Tricky Wind. Tricky Wind for Psychic colorless does 160, and then your opponent can't place Pokemon tools or special energy from their hand during their next turn. And its V Star power is an attack. So we have 3 abilities and 3 attacks and 3 abilities out of the 6 V-Star Pokemon we've seen so far. For 1 Psychic, it does 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy attached to this Pokemon. So if you have 3 energy that you needed to use for Tricky Wind, you're already doing 180 to just anything, just snipe it for 180. And then if you add 1 more, you're doing 240 to anything, 300, etc. So this could even be used in a Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX deck as a backup attacker that has metal weakness instead of dark. A 2 prize attacker, an attacker that stops your opponents from attaching special energy in maybe a matchup where your opponent is relying on special energy. And then it could even just be used to finish off a Pokemon on the bench. You can accelerate a lot of energy from Shadow Rider Calyrex onto this and then snipe something for a whole bunch of damage on the bench. It could be its own deck for Tricky Wind, but that would require a metagame where there are so many decks that are relying almost entirely on special energy that you can lock them out of the game with this Tricky Wind to stop them from attaching special energy. So maybe that can also be a possible use for Whimsicott V Star, but we are ranking it as number 5 out of the 6 for now. And honestly, I think the first 4 are all very good in their own rights. And even Whimsicott is not bad. Whimsicott is decent at the worst. Like, it is playable. There are situations and decks and metagames where this could be played. So I'm really, really happy that, because when VMAXs first came out, most of the VMAXs were bad. And Pokemon does that a lot. Creatures Incorporated will design a new mechanic and put out very underwhelming first wave of that mechanic, but these are actually really, really good all around. And then last, we're going to have Glaceon V Star. I do love all the evolutions, but this Glaceon just kind of misses the mark. It doesn't do anything better than any other water Pokemon we already have, basically. So keep in mind, we do have Melanie as a water type supporter, or a supporter that helps water Pokemon. Draw 3 cards and accelerate a water energy from discard to the Pokemon. We have Suicune V, that's a really great Pokemon. And that is a basic V Pokemon that can do 220 damage before any additional damage buffs, and that attacks for 2 energy. So Glaceon V Star, 260 HP, so it's better HP than our other 2 prize water Pokemon that we have right now, Suicune, but it's worse than, say, an Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. Icicle Shot 180, your opponent's defending can't retreat next turn, but of course they can use Switch, they can use Escape Rope, etc. And then Crystal Star is the V-Star power. Water colorless does 220, and during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage from effects of attacks, all damage and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon. The problem is your opponent can just Escape Rope, they can just boss his orders, they can Cross Switcher, they can Pokemon Catcher, they can use Leafeon V Star's new ability. So Glaceon V Star by far has the worst V Star power that we've seen so far, and that's why it's number 6 for me. So these are my thoughts on how good or ungood the new V-Star Pokemon are. There are only 6 so far, and I'm sure we'll get plenty more. The set names that we've seen teased make us think that there will be Darkrai and Cresselia and Giratina V-Stars as well, and probably a lot more, like I said. But I'm really excited. I think V-Stars are a great new mechanic, and let me know what you think about these and how you would rank them in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe to Beastcoast Pokemon for more awesome Pokemon content, and I'll see y'all next time.